Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So for this week, we will be discussing Module 3 of Quarter 3, Grade 10 Science with the title, The Power and Control of the Nervous System. Obviously, our topic for today is all about the nervous system, its divisions, subdivisions, but also we will be discussing the neuron or the nerve cell. The most essential learning competency for this topic is to describe how the nervous system coordinates and regulates these feedback mechanisms to maintain homeostasis. In the first two modules that we have discussed in the two previous video lessons, we have already mentioned the term homeostasis, and we know that homeostasis translates to equilibrium or balance. So for us to better understand how the nervous system works and also what are the different parts, divisions, and subdivisions of this system, we will be using this website called Biodigital. As an example, I will be using a male nervous system. However, this is similar to a female nervous system. So this is the male nervous system. As you can see, the nervous system has its parts connected to all parts of our body. So it has nerves that are connected to the hands. It has nerves connected to our reproductive system, which we have just discussed last time. It also has parts that are connected all the way up to our feet. So what does this mean? I just want to correct the misconception that the nervous system only talks about the brain and the spinal cord. The nervous system consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and all of the nerves that are connected to the different parts of the body. Now, what is the nervous system? The nervous system is the major control system of homeostasis. It is also the main processing center. So what does that mean? You can compare this to a computer. A computer has what we call a processing unit. So that processing unit acts like something that directs whatever happens in our computer. So whatever you do on your computer, you cannot be able to do that without the processing unit. Just like the computer, we in our body have our nervous system that directs all of the other systems. Its main function is to provide monitoring, response, and regulation of all the systems in the human body, and also for other organisms. Although they say that humans have the most intelligent brain, other organisms, but not all, also have brains. The nervous system is divided into two, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Now, what is the difference between the two? So we will start first with the central nervous system. Okay, so what do you notice? So what you see on your screen, this is what consists the central nervous system. We have the brain and we also have the spinal cord. So in short, the central nervous system is made up of two parts, the brain and the spinal cord. It acts as the body's control center and coordinates body activities. On the other hand, if we remove the brain and the spinal cord, all of the other nerves that connect from these two parts towards the other parts of the body, we call that the peripheral nervous system. Now, this is the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system work together to make rapid changes in our body in response to stimuli. So, we need to highlight the term rapid. Ibig sabihin, mabilis. For example, you are walking and suddenly you are able to step on something that is pointed. Diba? It will just take a few seconds or milliseconds or a fraction of a second for you to be able to sense that pain because the nervous system works very fast. Mamaya malalaman natin kung paano yung process ng paggalaw or pag-action ni nervous system. Let's first focus on the different parts. So, let's go first to the different parts of the peripheral nervous system or subdivisions. Okay? So, the peripheral nervous system has two subdivisions, the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Now, what is the difference between the two? The key term here is that somatic nervous system focuses on the voluntary activities of the body, whereas the autonomic nervous system focuses on the involuntary or the automatic processes in our body. So, what are some examples of voluntary? So, for you to be able to walk, you have to move your feet or you have to move your legs. For you to be able to reach into something, you have to move your hand. That is an example of voluntary activity. So, the nervous system, the part of the peripheral nervous system in charge of this is the somatic nervous system. Whereas for autonomic nervous system, it is in charge of involuntary processes such as, for example, heartbeat, okay, breathing. We don't need to think about our heartbeat for our heart to beat. It's automatic. Alright? Now, in terms of this diagram, three-dimensional diagram, we can show the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Okay, I want you to look closely at the diagram. This is the whole peripheral nervous system. So, let's just focus on the somatic. So, let's hide this. Okay, so these are the somatic nerves. As you can see, majority of the nerves that we have seen a while ago are included in somatic nerves. Now, how about autonomic nervous system or autonomic nerves? Okay, these are the autonomic nerves or the autonomic nervous system. Majority of them are just concentrated near the spinal cord. Okay, so the autonomic nervous system has two subdivisions. First, we have the sympathetic nervous system, and the second one, we have the parasympathetic nervous system. The difference is when they are activated. The sympathetic nervous system are in control or is in control in times of stress such as the flight or fight response. Whereas the parasympathetic nervous system controls the body in times of rest or if you are relaxed or calm. Okay, so we are now done with the peripheral nervous system. Let's go now to the central nervous system. Again, these two parts consist the central nervous system. We have the brain and the spinal cord. So the spinal cord connects the brain to all parts of the body, and of course the brain does most of the processing. Let's go now to the brain. So this is a three-dimensional image of the brain. It's a human brain. So the brain has a lot of parts, but we can divide it into three main sections. The cerebrum, which is the larger part. The cerebellum, which is located at the back or at the bottom. And the brainstem, which appears to be a small stem. So, what are the functions of these parts? Let's go now to the cerebrum. The cerebrum is in charge of memory, intelligence, language, and other conscious activities. As you can see, it is wrinkled with countless folds and covered with an outer layer of what we call a gray matter. But here in the picture, it's not really colored gray, it's pinkish. We call that matter cerebral cortex. And this cerebrum is divided further into four lobes, which are the temporal lobe, the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, and the occipital lobe. So these four lobes were not mentioned in your module. However, I just want to tell you that these four lobes have different functions. For example, the temporal lobe is more on the hearing. The frontal lobe, it's more on decision making. The parietal lobe, it is more on sensory receptors or reception, and the occipital lobe is more on the vision. The cerebellum, on the other hand, is more on muscle coordination. So if ever that something happens to a person and his cerebellum is injured, what happens is that the movements will have a difference. The movements may become jerky. Pwede rin na mahirapan siyang maigalaw yung kanyang mga muscles or yung kanyang katawan. They say that athletes, they have a well-trained cerebellum. And according to scientists, the cerebellum, okay, sa ating mga tao, mas malaki kasi ang cerebrum, di ba? As you can see in the side view. Why? Because we are thinking mammals. Whatever we use most, yan ang lalaki sa atin. However, for the case of reptiles, just like dinosaurs, the cerebellum is larger. Why? Because they are not really thinking. The cerebellum is larger because they tend to move a lot. So, since they use their muscles a lot, the cerebellum would be larger. Finally, the brainstem, it has more parts. We have the medulla oblongata, we have the pons, we have the midbrain. The brainstem, generally, it is in control of involuntary activities such as heart rate and breathing. Okay, so tandaan lang natin, brainstem, involuntary activities. Let's move on now to the neuron. So the neuron is another name for the nerve cell. It is the basic unit of the nervous system. Without the neurons or the nerve cells, our body or the parts of our body cannot communicate with each other, especially if the message is coming from the nervous system. On your screen, you can see the different parts of the neuron or the nerve cell. You can also see the different functions of each part. Now, what are the most important parts here that you have to remember? So, you need to remember the dendrites and the axon because information enters and leaves these parts in only one direction. Okay, we can compare this to our hand or our arm extended with our palms and fingers corresponding to the cell body and the dendrites, and our arm that corresponds to the axon. Remember that the messages enter the dendrites and leave the axon. So, ganun palagi ang kanyang direction. Hindi pwedeng palabas ng dendrites. Laging papasok sa dendrites, palabas sa axon. And sa dulo ng axon, we have terminal buttons that connect to the next neuron. They are not really connected. There is a space in between them, and we call that space the synapse or the synapse. So how long is a neuron? Some neurons are very short, only a millimeter in length. But however, there are neurons that can be as long as about 1 meter, especially if they are motor neurons. Now, the next question is, how are body processes controlled through the nervous system? So, halimbawa, ano nangyayari pag ikaw ay nakakita ng isang bagay? Paano siya pinaprocess ng ating nervous system? So, let's say that it's a very hot day and galing ka sa jogging and then finally nakaramdam ka ng uhaw. Okay? So, kapag ikaw ay nakaramdam ng uhaw, syempre kailangan mo ng tubig. Yung tubig na yon or any drink that will serve as the stimulus. What is a stimulus? So, stimulus is something in our environment that incites activity. So, dahil ikaw ay uuhaw, ang nangyayari, naghahanap ka ng inumin, yung inumin mo, yun ang stimulus mo. So, nakita mo yun. Nakita mo siya gamit ang iyong mata. Ang mata ninyo ay tinatawag na receptor. Actually, all sensory organs are receptors. Kaya nga lang this time, dahil naghahanap ka ng maiinom, mata ang gagamitin natin. So, in all our sensory organs, we have what we call a sensory neuron. A sensory neuron is a type of neuron or nerve cell that connects our sensory organs to the central nervous system. So what happens is that whatever your eyes see or your sensory organs sense will be transmitted through the sensory neuron towards the central nervous system. And then this message will be passed on from one neuron to another. We call this interneurons or relay neurons. Kaya siya tinawag na interneurons kasi nasa gitna sila. Mag-iisip ngayon si central nervous system. Ano bang gagawin ng katawan dapat para makuha si stimulus? Kasi nauuhaw ka na nga eh. Ngayon, ang gagawin niya, ang magiging response niyan ay, syempre, kukunin yung tubig, yung baso ng tubig at iinumin mo. Syempre, hindi mangyayari yon kung hindi gagalaw ang iyong braso, ang iyong kamay para abutin ang tubig. So, yung instruction na yon galing kay brain, ipapadala niya gamit si motor neuron. Si motor neuron naman, coming from the nervous system, going to your muscles. Okay? So, in that way, may instruct na yung inyong braso na kunin yung tubig, makakainom na kayo, mawawala na yung inyong uhaw. So, ganun kakomplikado yung process ng pagpasa ng information starting from the stimulus going to your sense organ, going to your nervous system, and then the nervous system deciding what to do, and then translating that information into a response na ibabato naman niya kay muscle. Okay? Again, of course, kung mapapansin natin, napaka-complicated nung process, pero napakabilis lang yan mangyari. Kasi nga, itong mga information na to, they transfer in the form of signals, electrical signals. So, mabilis lang talaga yan. In a split second, nakakaisip ka na agad ng response sa isang stimulus. However, of course, the response will be different from one person to another. Kasi nga, syempre, we have different brains, we have different nervous systems. So, yun, nakuha na po yung difference, no? The neuron, it has different types. We have sensory neurons that connect the sensory organs to the nervous system. We also have the motor neurons which connect the nervous system to your muscles for the response. And we have the interneurons or the relay neurons that connect the sensory neurons and the motor neurons. So, I think that's all for today's discussion. I have already covered majority of the concepts that are being discussed in Module 3 of Quarter 3. So, I hope you learned something from this supplementary video lesson. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment down on the box below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in our next lesson. Bye!